welcome. This is the video of the state of the team here. I've been really looking forward to this season coming up for a long time because it's probably one of the best rosters I've ever assembled by myself. And I did it all by the rules, which is cool. Like, only one first round pick, no trading. And I tried to stick to the OHL rules, having multiple 16-year-olds each year and stuff. So, anyways, it's really hard to have a dominant team in juniors because as soon as you do that, you usually have a couple of rebuilding years. So I wanted to stay steady and be a playoff team each year, which we've accomplished if you look at our history since I took over. 44 wins, 21 losses, 53, 45, 46. Still, worst year we had still playoff team at 35 and 31, and then another 44 win season. Unfortunately, and we finished first place again in the East. Fortunately, we got knocked out by Kingston in the second round. Where goalies just kind of hit a cold streak in the end of the regular season, went into the playoffs at only one star heat, and I don't know if that was a huge factor. We just played bad, but we dominated our first playoff series against a underwhelming Niagara team that was had a losing record, and then we got smoked by Kingston, who was like a 36-37 win team. So it happened, but this episode is going to be the draft here, so I'll talk about the draft picks. But I think before that, what I want to do is just go over the team because I already proactively went ahead and released all the guys that won't be back next year, just to kind of clear out this so you can see who's back. And so every single person here, except for Wernich, should be back. I'm not 100% sure because he was only a fifth-round pick, and he's really good. I don't think he will be back, but I don't want to release him yet because I think there's still maybe a chance he doesn't get an AHL contract. I think he for sure will play in the ECHL, but I've also seen crazier things happen. So I think there's a small probability that he might be back. So we'll keep on the roster. But he had a dominant year the last couple of years. Such a sweet player to have on the wing. 38 and 40 goals, 10 game-winning goals last season. So call him Mr. Clutch. He's up to a 5-star potential, which is awesome. Anyways, I love his contribution. The crazy surprise was just a couple days ago in the draft, Wilder got drafted, which is crazy. He was undrafted 2 years in a row, and then as a 19-year-old, he went in the 7th round to Florida, going into his overage season. So I was never expecting that. So now I'm almost wondering if he'll be back, because he potentially, as an NHL draft pick, could be in the AHL or ECHL too. I don't think so. I don't think he's high enough rated. Barely a 9 or 10 player. But wouldn't be the end of the world because we do have this guy as a right winger who's kind of a backup next year. But he was a center when I drafted him, and he has some pretty solid ratings. So he can be a solid fourth-line center at 6'4", 220 and going into his 19-year-old season. So I'm not too worried. But I think Wilder would be a really cool OA to have this season, hopefully, because I've always loved his game. I drafted him when he was 6 foot, like 175, and he's filled out and become a really good physical player with good ratings all across the board. Just as you can see, almost all yellows and greens. Awesome face-offs and defensive read and checking. So really solid second or third or fourth line center. Just a guy that, as a 20-year-old, should really take a step up and just be a really dominant player in a league with a bunch of undersized 16-year-olds and crush them with his good hitting and size. So anyways, we'll see about that. And then the other surprise was Kuhn got drafted, who is 6'2", 194. He was my former first-round pick. He was undrafted 2 years in a row, or 1 year. He had a late birthday, I guess. And then as a 19-year-old, he got drafted in the 3rd round, which is insane. He was the 228th ranked North American skater, which puts him at about 400 overall in the rankings, which so to get to go in the top 100 is insane. So obviously their scouts really liked him. He is one of my favorite players because he has such cool offensive read and passing. He's a good skater, and he's 6'2", and he's got decent defense now. So anyways, he's a guy that he was going to be an OA too. So that whole line is really up in the air because now all 3 of them have been drafted. So the 2 guys I was 100% expecting it back as OAs, which is Kuhn and Wilder, potentially could not be back, but potentially all 3 of them could be back. We can have a wicked 3 guys on the OA line. But anyways, I don't know what to expect. One of them's going to have to go because this guy's taking up an OA spot. This goalie here, Waldemar, which is like the coolest name ever, Stolarski. And then we got our foreign backup Russian goalie too. So, Sokolov's going into his age 19 season. Just going into his 18 age season. He's no 7, so yeah. So anyways, he'll be the starter next year as a 19-year-old after this season. So, what I want to show you here is just the lines. So if we do get Baker and Sorry, if we do get all three of these guys back, we'll have an 11, 11, and 12 as the three OAs. We'll have the Wernich, Wilder, Kuhn line. I'm expecting these two back. I'm not expecting Wernich back, as we just talked about. So what will happen is Sinchenya will jump up to that second line with those two 20-year-olds. And then we'll have that 6'4" guy I showed you play on that fourth line. And either way, we'll still be pretty solid. We'll have an amazing 19-year-old first line. So all three of these first liners will be, well, sorry, they'll actually be the second line. The first line is going to be Bear, Bregman, Kolowski. I'll talk about that in a second. So the 19-year-old line is going to be really nice. We're going to have Baker is 6'2", 224. As you can see, he has really solid ratings across the board. He was dynamite this season, 56 points. Shared some time in the first line power play unit, kind of rotated him and Kuhn in that first line left wing spot in the first line power play. So a Baker who's really, really good. Kellerman, who's got one of the coolest progressions I've ever seen. He's actually almost maxed out, but not quite in his abilities. He's gone down to 3.5 potential. He's 2.5. This league has him maxed out already, but my scout still thinks he has some ways to go. And I think my scout's right on this guy because he had high potential when I drafted him in the second round. And he's really progressed. His size has gone up like crazy and all his ratings. Now, if you look at him, he's a really good all-around player. He's the best skater I've ever drafted with 14 speed and 12 and the other stuff. He's got awesome positioning, 6 foot, 215. He's got wicked face-offs and a really good offensive game. So he's a really, really good all-around player for this league. He will be back as no way the following season too. He's another guy that's been undrafted. So these next 2 years, he should be really good. I think he has potential to be a 100-point guy when he's no way the following season. So it'll be Baker, him, and then the third 19-year-old is the Kellerman. Kellerman was actually my first-round pick. The guys are just coincidentally both named Kellerman. The center was a second-round pick, and this guy was the first-round pick. Baker was also a second-round pick, so all three of these guys were top two round picks. I had the multiple seconds that year. So Kellerman is 4.5 potential. It says from the league. My scout has him as 3.5. He's had a couple of really solid seasons. He was a plus 19 last year too with those other two 18-year-olds, and he's got a wicked game too. He's grown all the way to 6'2", which is cool. He was 6 foot 180 when I drafted him, 185 or something. So he's up to 6'2", 223. He's turned into a horse. He's got 15 passing and a really good defense. It's probably my best defensive forward now that I think about it. So he will be awesome on that second line. So that will be the second line, those three 19-year-olds. So that line is just going to be wicked. All three of those guys are going to be physical, big, strong 19-year-olds, 6'2". They're all over 215, and the 6'2", and the other center 6 foot. So that line is going to be money. And then we have the really cool line is the three 17-year-olds. This is actually going to end up being the first line. These are the three most talented guys on the team for their ages, even though they're really young. This center is probably the best talent I've ever drafted. He's just finished a 16-year-old season, and he had 24 goals, 60 points. He was on the first line power play as a 16-year-old, and he's a really good skater, has a wicked shot. All his stuff is going to be like 15s, 16s in a couple of years. And his defense isn't as bad as it looks because the stick checking is really high, his positioning is pretty good, and once that defensive read comes along and he gets a little bit more physical, he's going to be a really good player. He's up to 270 pounds already too. So he's got a bright, bright future. So he's going to be wicked. Then the right winger learned right wing this season. He was a left winger when I drafted him. So he took almost the whole season to get up to be a competent right winger. But I thought that was a sacrifice I was willing to make for the future because I wanted this line to stay together and I wanted one of them to be able to play right wing. So he took the whole year to go from a 12 to a 20 right winger. And he is going to be wicked in the future. He's such a big, strong, physical player, but then he's got crazy goal scoring ability with his 15 getting open and his 14 shooting accuracy. But he's also a pretty aware player with 12 and 11 as the reads as a 16-year-old, which is pretty good. And so after training camp progression, his screening and passing start to go up a bit, and his defense gets even better. He's going to be a force. When he's 19, he's going to be a scary, scary player. Probably be like 6'6", 230, with all 13s in the defensive stuff. So he'll be a defensive force out there with an elite goal scoring ability. So I'm really excited about his future. And then if you look at Bear, he's probably the most complete player I've ever drafted. He's got 30 points as a rookie, and he's got almost all greens across the board as just turned 17. So when he's also, I think, was he down to a 3.5 star potential. So he's got a ways to go to reach his potential. I think he will be almost all green by the time he's done in everything, which is insane. Mental ratings too. So he's going to be such an incredible player to see when he's 19. I can't wait to play out his career. So the fact that him and this guy are going to be on the same line when they're 19 years old is going to be unstoppable at the OHL level, because this guy's just going to be a physical force. This guy's going to be a pure skill. He's just going to be crazy. He's going to have like 16 and everything. And then they're going to have this amazing goal-scoring center in between them. So it's going to be so exciting to see that line. And then the coolest thing about that best of all, is the three of them are going to play together for the full 3 or 4 years. So their chemistry is already at fair. It's already good with Baird at Brenneman, which is crazy. And then by the time they're all 19, I think they should all have like excellent chemistry. So that's going to be such a cool thing. So yeah, that first line next season with those 3 17-year-olds is going to be so cool to see how they produce. And then yeah, the Baker Kellerman line will be second. We'll make the OAs the third lines. They're more defensive oriented. Wilder, and then Sinchenya is probably our second best defensive player. He'll be on the line with them probably if Warnish is gone. And then Kuhn will also, he'll play on that third line with those guys, but then he'll also be on the first line power play. I'll probably put him as a point man because he's such a good offensive player. So then he'll get his ability to play offense there. So that's the forward group. I'm really excited. Oh, I didn't even go to the last 3 guys. So quickly, I'll just show you Joe. He's not got a lot of potential, just a really solid 6'2", 250-pound fourth liner as a 19-year-old with good defense. Just kind of average, which is fine for that fourth line. Not many guys that good in the fourth line in this league. And then we got Joe, who's one of my favorite players on the team. Joe has got good chemistry with half the team already. He's still pretty far from his potential, so he's still going to keep progressing. As a fourth line shutdown defender last year, he was at plus 20, and his ratings would be a lot higher. He'd probably be a second line center in most teams, or even a first line center. He's got incredible defensive ratings. He's probably the best defense player in the team, actually, now that I think about it, with the hitting and positioning. If his defensive rate goes up a bit, he's going to be the perfect shutdown defender. And he's a guy who's got a really well-rounded offensive game too, now that he's older and progressed and all that. So he's just the perfect fourth line center, probably the best fourth line center in this league. I feel kind of bad not having him up a little bit higher, but the team's just so loaded. I think what I'll do is this. So if you look at our team, this is the 20-year-old line. This is the 19-year-old line. This is another 19-year-old line, the fourth line. Sinchenya is actually 18. And this is the 17-year-old line. So I actually think what will happen is I'll probably have the overagers for next year will probably be like this year. These 3 guys are gonna be 19, and these 2 guys are gonna be 19. So, and Hickey's 19. So what I'll do is I'll probably have the OAs be Baker, and then one of the Kellermans, and then probably Joe. But it'll be tough not to have Hickey, because Hickey's such a beast. I'll go over that next, the defenseman. But we'll worry about that next year. We'll see how this year goes. A lot changes in a year. So that's the loaded forward group with all the older fellas. And then quickly we'll go over the defense here. So we have 4 19-year-olds on defense too. So this team was just built for this year pretty much. We got Hickey, who's going to his 19-year-old season. He's played his whole career. He was a big 6'5", 170-pound drafty. He's filled out pretty nicely. He's turned into a really good defense player with a really nice shot, and actually has been pretty decent puck handling too. So he's a big, strong fellow who's going to be wicked on that first-line defense. We're going to make Stemkowski into a left defenseman this year. He's going to take some grooming. He's only a 14 rated there, but he's a left shot, even though he was listed as a right D-man. So he's a guy that played junior for the last 2 years, so he's going into his 18-year-old first OHL season, so he's going to be probably the most inexperienced guy on the team, but I really like his game. He's got some really balanced ratings and pretty solid passing, and he's growing to 6 foot 197, so he'll be hopefully solid. And then Joseph's a guy who's played since he was 16, 2 full seasons, got 30 and 38 starts the last 2 years, and he's turned into a really solid defensive player. I think he'll be really good by the time he's finished his 19-year-old season with good chemistry with everybody. And his offense rating should start to get into the greens by then. He'll be another solid, steady defenseman. The defense isn't that great just because I spent all my high draft picks on forwards. So you got to remember I'm just happy with like average at defense. I'm not looking for any studs. Bianchini was kind of the weak spot of the team. I had him. He was the only offensive-oriented defenseman really I've had because I haven't really spent any high picks on defensemen. So he was actually a later round pick, a 6th-rounder, which is cool. But I've started him since he was 16 because I was really weak on defense a couple years ago. And I knew I wanted to build for this 19-year-old year, so I was just trying to get a bunch of guys with chemistry. So I played him when he was younger and pretty average, but he's actually turned into a really solid, steady guy. So he's not very good on offense, but I didn't have any other offensive-oriented defensemen, so he actually had to play on the point last year, which is kind of my team on the power play, and he wasn't very good because I was used to having Clark there before Bianchini's years. So he actually had some pretty gaudy point numbers actually for pretty his talent range should not really be putting up those kind of points. So what that kind of did though is now that he's 19, he actually is pretty solid. And after training camp, one more progression, he should be pretty solid. So he was in line to be the first line defenseman, but I made a big trade which was for Alistair. Alistair, I put my goalie on the training block. I had a 19-year-old Canadian goalie I drafted pretty high 4 years ago. And he wasn't going to start with my big Polish guy and the sweet Russian guy backing up. So I decided to put him on the trade block, and London Knights offered this incredible offensive defenseman. He's probably the top offensive defenseman I've ever had next to Clark, and he's not absolutely that bad at defense because he does have 12 defensive read, which is cool. But he's just a pure offensive guy and smart dude because he's got 14 read, 13 passing. He's got a wicked shot. So he's actually going to be my power play guy on defense. And the cool thing is he's a right shot too. So I'm really excited about him. I traded my goalie for him. He also has a gold medal internationally too, which is nice to have some experience there. As you can see, he's a 12 quarterback, so he's right away going to be the best defenseman I've had in 3 years. And so he's going to be awesome to play with all those amazing forwards because when you're that loaded at forward, you need to be able to have a defenseman that get them the puck. Having a really good power play quarterback with all those awesome goal scorers up front is just going to make a world of difference. And I think that'll be the difference between last year's team and this coming year's team is we just didn't have that defenseman that was good enough. I had a 7 rated guy there the whole season as my first line power play quarterback. So I just feel like we probably didn't take advantage of our forward skill set based on the defenseman not being able to move the puck up well enough. So I'm really happy with that move. I might even try to make another one like that and give up a bunch of assets to get another 10 to 12 rated defenseman. And I don't know, but Bianchini I don't really want to replace though because he's got such good potential with playing everybody for like 4 years, and he's just a sweet leader and all that. So I think I'll maybe stick with that. And then so yeah, we have the 19-year-old Hickey, and then we have 19-year-old Bianchini, and then we have the 19-year-old Alistair, and then we have the big 19-year-old Galbraith, which I really like this guy. He's played juniors whole career. I called him up at the end of last season to start to get some experience at an empty slot, and I knew he'd be a starter this year. He's 6'6", 220. This is the coolest thing ever. I drafted this guy when he was, what was he, like 6'4", 160 back in the day, and then he's just sat in junior and he's progressed like crazy. He's only ever had 1-star potential. He was a really late round pick, an 8th rounder, but he has just constantly progressed, and I'm so excited. He's one of my favorite guys I've drafted just because of how far he's come. His skating was all 6s and 5s when I drafted him, and it's gone all the way up to 10s. So at 6'6", having a 10 speed isn't that bad. And so he's finally able to play at the OHL level with his skating up to par now, and his offensive read and shooting range have gone up like crazy, and his defense has gotten pretty decent. So I'm really excited about him. I think it'd be really cool just to have him on the third line, just a guy that's like kind of the picture of what you want to develop for those late round picks. And then that's it for the team. So on top of all that, I do have a first round pick. So I don't really have a like big weak spot, although I probably could take a defenseman in the first round and just slot him in as that third liner right away over Stemkowski. Because Stemkowski is kind of old, 18 already, and he doesn't have any chemistry. He's not that great. So we could probably trade him to somebody for a mid-rounder and then replace him with that first-round pick, or just have him as a solid backup. I do have the 2 good backups already, though. This guy was going to be a starter until I traded for that power play quarterback. He was going to be kind of a weak spot, though. He was 18. He played a lot as a 17-year-old last year, and he's got a couple. You got to remember he's got a couple developments left, so he actually will be pretty solid by the time he's 19. After this training camp, he should be a really solid defender, but he'll be a steady backup. And then I also have the 6'5" guy drafted this year, who is going to be a stud in the future. He actually somehow made the World Under-18 team this year over all those, as a 16-year-old somehow, over all my stud forwards that didn't make it as 17-year-olds that are like twice the ratings as this guy. So I don't know how that happened exactly, but he'll be a really solid player. He's going to be 17 this coming season. When he's older, he should be a beast. Hopefully get up to like 230 pounds and just crush everybody with his overall ratings. He's got really good checking and defensive read and hitting and all that. So I'm excited about him too. He's another good backup to have. And then we do have this one last guy I didn't show you yet. Is Do It. He's come a long way too. He'll be probably a second or third line center his 19-year-old season. He's just a really balanced overall guy with some good passing and offensive read. So a nice playmaker in the center. So that's the team. I'm going to make another episode here about the draft in a second. But yeah, if you look at the team here, not a lot of big weaknesses now that we have that really good defenseman. I think the only thing we could really do is maybe try to find a way to bring in like a 11 or 12 rated left defenseman there, solidify that left side, and have Alistair and that guy, and then Hickey as a really good second line pairing. But other than that, the forward group is looking stacked. The goalies are looking good, so super excited about this season.